It all started so innocent. Of course, that's what you'd expect when you have a couple of 4 and 5-year-olds playing in the park. First name was, I'll race you to the swing set. And then it was, I'm smarter than you are. A little while later, the ultimate challenge came. My dad can beat up your dad. You think that's not what happens? It's what happens to those little kids. Even your unregenerate little covenant children. Because that was one of the things that I got into, I remember. And the man, he's now a man, his name was Dean, young guy who went to my father's church, that we were having this little tussle, and my dad was the preacher, and my dad was the big guy. He was a lot bigger than me. He was 6'3", and a good guy, not overweight like me. He was a trim man. He was a good guy. And in that particular exchange, he said, my dad could hit your dad so hard, he'd fly over a school bus. Well, I've talked to him years later, and we're okay. Why do you think little children think their dads are so strong? It might be because from infancy, if they have had the privilege and blessing of a father who loved them and engaged them, since infancy, they've been caring for them, tucking them in bed at night, providing for them and protecting them. From their tiny little vantage point, there is nothing stronger than their father. They can't imagine it. He's the biggest person in their life. And in their world, that's the ultimate power. But as children grow older and they experience life and observe us mere mortals, their experiences brings Dad down to mere mortal size. And in some ways, we sigh of relief. Because it's hard to be a God. But do you know what? You are a God, fathers, to your little children in some ways. Obey your parents in the Lord. In other words, what they're saying is righteous, holy commandments of the house. Make sure you live righteous and holy so that they don't find a great disparity between what you say and what you do. When I was a child, one of my father's favorite songs, and he would sing it often, he says, wide, wide is the ocean, high as the heavens above. Deep, deep is the deepest sea, is my Savior's love. I, oh so unworthy, but still I'm a child of his care. For his word teaches me that his love reaches me everywhere. He loved that song. And the same way, we would swing our arms wide, wide, wide. And that's the way kids do when they describe how much they love mom and dad and grandpa and grandma. If I was asked when I was a little child, how big is your God? I would probably have said, so big. And today I ask you, how big is your God? How would you answer that? Did you know that you are answering that question every single day of your life? You're answering it by the way that you face the problems that you go through. You answer it in the way that you live. You are shouting to your world that you live in what your perspective of the God we worship today, as we are lifting our hands or at least our voices and saying, yes, our God is awesome and He is big. The world gets to hear our proclamation, and they determine how big our God is in our eyes by the way we live, our attitudes, our actions. What are you telling them? Last week, I spoke on the power of let. I encourage you to get that message and the one before it where Tim spoke about poor me, poor me. God has a call on each of your lives, and you are here for a purpose. You are His child, and you have the ability in God to follow Him as children. You are destined to reign with Him forever. And He wants you to stand up and start reigning in this life. And I challenge you that today, I want you to consider how you are communicating to the audience that listens to you every single day. What you say about your Father in heaven. Is He someone that they should get to know? Is He someone that if they went there, they would feel that they would have a strong person who's able to carry them? I don't want to discourage you today, because you know in some ways, as I do, that I fall short in my proclamation of the greatness of God each and every day. And I want to encourage you by looking at the life of Moses. Was Moses a pretty awesome dude, right? In the Bible, I mean, Moses, man, he's one of the guys that, oh, if only I could be like Moses. Well, you will be able to relate to Moses a little bit today. And I hope that as we look and learn alongside Moses, you will be encouraged to learn the same lessons that Moses learned at God's school. Moses was born a Jewish slave in Egypt, and it was evident that his mother, who had taught him in the early years of his life, both before he was sentenced to death and placed in a basket in the bulrushes, because all of the young slaves of the Israelites were to be thrown into the Nile River. But she, up until that time where she nurtured and loved and nursed this little child, and then with great hope and faith placed this child in a basket, and had Miriam, his older sister, look and watch from a distance as this little child was placed there, technically into the Nile, right? And though Moses had felt the loving arms of a parent and a father who spoke words that might have caused this little child to smile, God later on would use the events that happened, that how Miriam and the princess, Pharaoh's daughter, came down bathing and saw little Moses in the bulrushes and claimed him as her own. And then Miriam quickly came and offered Moses' own mother as the nursemaid to care for it until the time of weaning. I want to let you know that in that day and age, they nursed their children a lot longer than we do. They might have been 4 or 5. In those years Moses had learned at his mother's knee all about the God of Yahweh. He had learned how that though they were in Egypt now because of the story of Joseph and how God used Joseph in the dream to save not only their own family but all of Egypt. He learned those stories and knew them. He knew from his mother's mouth and his father's mouth that God created the heavens and the earth. And all of the stories that we get to read in our little Bible stories, and hopefully you're teaching your children all of this history. But Moses knew all about God before he ever left to join the court of Pharaoh. He knew that it was his brothers and sisters, his brethren, who were suffering underneath the whip of slavery in Egypt, toiling to build the edifices to the power of a man, the pyramids, when they themselves had no land, no place at that point. He knew all this when he had grown up as a young prince in Egypt. Though he was aware of all this, he was still unaware of how big God is. He knew the stories about this person, but he was small in his eyes. And so I want to read at this point Exodus 2, 1 through 15. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, and her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid in to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. When a baby cries, doesn't that just open the maternal heart of any woman, if not some men? So she had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." Then his sister, that's Miriam, hiding in the bulrushes, said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the maiden went and called the child's mother. And when Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you wages." Wow, God is blessed. So the woman took the child and nursed him, and the child grew. And she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water," because that's what the word Moses meant. Now it came to pass in those days that when Moses was grown and he had went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that. And when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he came out the second day, behold, two Hebrew men were fighting. And he said to the one who did the wrong, "Why are you striking your companion?" And he said, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me like you killed the Egyptians?" The gig was up. So Moses feared and said, "Surely this thing is known." And when Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. Moses was not looking to God to be the deliverer of Israel. Instead, he tried because he saw the need. He actually had a call on his life to free his brethren. That was God's call on his life. But he was doing this in his own strength, with his own power. Have you ever fallen into that trap where you see a need and you even might have a call in your life that, you're supposed to be doing this someday? And you say, "Well, okay, I think I know how to do this. I think you're right." I look in the mirror and I go, "Whoa,
Yeah, I think I could do this. I know my gift set. I'm pretty awesome. And you go in there and try to straighten things out, and someone comes up to you and says, hey buddy, who made you ruler over us? Who crowned you king? You can end up messing our lives up like you messed up your own. Get out of here. Whoa, no good deed goes unpunished. But I tell you what, when we come to a place of embarrassment because we fail, it's a good thing. It didn't turn out very well for Moses. It was evident by his actions that he wasn't looking to God for deliverance. His God was way too small. And I want us now to read the next portion about Moses. And that's in Exodus 3 through 12. You have to understand, last time we left him, he was fleeing. He went, and he's living for 40 years. You add 40 years to that, maybe years old. How many, women don't have to raise their hand. How many guys are 60 or plus? Okay. In some ways, you're just sort of like trying to wrap things up. Well, how am I going to finish well? You know what I mean? You aren't. The young conquer kingdoms. The old sort of manage them. Right? That's just sort of the way things go. So here he's been in Midian. He's changed profession. He's simply a shepherd. That's about all he feels good at. In fact, he knows that he can't talk really well, and he certainly is no deliverer. So here we take up the story of this shepherd. Then Moses said, I will now turn aside. For one thing, he sees this amazing sight when he's tending his sheep. A bush is burning. It's burning, but it's not burning up. It keeps burning. Then Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn. So when the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. Then he said, do not draw near this place, but take your sandals off your feet, for the place you are standing on is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the ones he had heard about in his head that he knew. And Moses hid his face, and he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cries because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows, so I have come down to deliver them. So I have come down to deliver them. Deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a good and a large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey. And a little bit further down it says, come now, therefore, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Wow, that's a pretty intense encounter. The burning bush demonstrated something that Moses needed to learn up to this point. It goes on to say, but Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, I will certainly go with you. The burning bush demonstrated that God's power is available. And it's just not the knowledge of God. It's knowing God and seeing him as your strong source, as your father. It's not this intellectual recognition that you are a child of somebody, but that God, that Father, is near and powerful, way more powerful than your earthly father was when you were a little child. He's so much bigger. In Exodus 4, verse 2, God teaches Moses a powerful lesson, and we all need to learn it. God told Moses that he would deliver the children, not Moses in his own strength. Moses saw God, but he was small. Small. After last week's message, did you feel a little bit small? Like God, yes, you are ruler, join heirs with him. But did you sense that it is God that is the one that will give direction? Moses' problem is he saw God as too small. And when we begin to see God as big as he is, suddenly we will turn to him. But until then, we don't. Exodus 4, verse 2. Then the Lord said to Moses, "What is in your hand?" And he replied, "A staff." He says, "I got a stick in my hand." What can you do if all you got in your hand is a stick? God asked him, "What do you got in your hand?" God wants you to participate in what he is going to do. And he has given each one of us something in our hand. I don't care whether it's a stick or you control blocks of a city. Whether it's banks or you get to end up controlling your little closet if your sister doesn't contest you for it. But whatever you have, God says, I want to use that to build my kingdom. So what can you do with a stick? We got a problem. We've got all these 3 million people that have to come out of Israel, out of Egypt to Israel. What do we got? We got an old man, we got a stick, plus God. Okay? Equals 3 million slaves delivered from the most powerful nation on earth. All right?
The lesson: God can and will accomplish anything using whatever is available.
God has things that you need to be set free from and for you to do, and they may seem too big for you, and you may have tried to do it in your own flesh, and you have failed. But God says, I did not pull back my commission and call on you. I have called you for good works, and you will do it. When you finally learn the lesson that it's not your own strength that you stand in. I don't care whether he gave you a stick, but you and what's in your hand plus God will equal deliverance from or through anything that is put in your way. We come up to the Red Sea. Now, I've been there this past year, and you get 3 million people and you don't got a boat or a barge, you are not going to get across that body of water. And I don't care whether you call it a Reed Sea or a Red Sea, you are not getting through there with all those people. Exodus 14, verse 16. What do we got? We got an old man, we got a stick, and God equals the Red Sea parted, the nation of Israel crossed on dry ground. You know, you could almost make a movie about that. Oh, later on, now they got across, and they come up to a place where they were so desperate for water. And this looked refreshing at Marah in Exodus 15, verse 23. But the water made the people sick. Nothing worse than having the answer there, and it makes you sick. Well, the answer, what do? You go to the old man with a stick. And he says, yeah, my stick's not what's going to do. You use an old man, a whole tree, plus God. And that's because God said, go cut down this tree that was growing nearby and throw it into the water. When you do that, the water will become sweet. Marah means bitter. All right? And so they took some dead old tree. How many want to have a bunch of dead branches thrown into your glass of water to clean it? That doesn't make sense. Must have been some awesome tree. An old man, an old tree, plus God, undrinkable water was miraculously made drinkable. Awesome. I'm getting the hang of this. All right? Later on, they get very thirsty in the desert. No trees, no lakes to even purify the water. Exodus 17, verse 6. We have no water at all. And God tells Moses to go take his stick, go find some rock, and take the stick and strike the rock. And out of the rock pours forth water enough to quench the thirst of 3 million or however many people there were in the desert. And Lot was soaking in the ground at the same time. It gushed out. Pardon? Plus the animals. Wow. Camels too. Must have been a river coming out of that thing. An old man, the stick, plus God, a drinking fountain for 1 million plus. Weary travelers. Awesome. Oh, yeah. Okay, later on, I want to get one of these sticks. Because, you know what? It's got to be the stick, right? Because the old man didn't have the power to do anything. And God, you know, you can't see him. I've called many times to God and got nothing. God, I love you. By faith, I reach out to you. Will you help me? Right now? And Lord, you know I'm speaking facetiously. I'm speaking as if I was a foolish man right now. But God, it's so hard to see you as the answer. I can see myself and my weakness, and I see what I got in my hand, and that thing is rotten. God, I need help. Now, they've just been seeing a bunch of stuff happen that is rocking their world. And I will tell you that as they looked, God was becoming bigger and bigger because the stick wasn't. No one thought it was the stick, though they did preserve it in the Ark of the Covenant. And with no water, it did bud. It was an awesome stick. But they knew that its nourishment was not from the stick. Its power was in God. God was becoming bigger. What is impossible with man is possible with God. Later on, Moses had the same dilemma, and he came up to the rock, and God said, they need water. And Moses thought he would use the stick on the rock. And do you know what? God in his mercy poured out water, but he said, Moses, I'm telling you, you are not going to go into the land of Canaan because you used your stick and your authority and made it appear in front of the people that it was you who was doing this, saying, shall I give you water? All God wanted that time was Moses and a whispered prayer and God. I will comfort you, O mere mortals like me, just because you at times overstep and fail. Just in case you're wondering that you're a little bit of a crooked stick, a less than perfect stick, God in his mercy still will use you until he finally gets you to a place where you understand and fear him. Do you fear the awesome, powerful God who loves you? I fear the Lord because he is awesome. He is a consuming fire. But he is tender toward me, his child. He is The one, as it says in Luke 18, verse 27, Jesus said, what is impossible with men is possible with God. Luke 1:37, nothing is impossible with God. With God. We got a major problem. In Matthew 14, verse 21, 5,000 people show up hungry, and the disciples need to feed them. Well, how do we do this? What's the solution? A little small child with what's in his hand, 5 loaves and 2 fish, plus God equals God feeding 5,000 followers. 12 baskets left over. Doggy bag, please. Moses had a call, and God knew Moses. But what about me? I am just a little kid. Who am I? I'm the least. I am broke. I don't have riches to give to people. Acts 3, verse 6, when Peter, who didn't have any pocket change left, was walking into the temple, and a person in desperate need said, have mercy on me, help me, begging a lame man. And Peter said, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give I thee. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk. You have been given authority in God to obey and dispense his power and his generosity on a world that is hurting at his command. At his command. Don't you take a bow for it. If you do, have mercy. God says this to you today. Whatever you have in your hand is enough when it is coupled with God. When you are called to do something, whatever you have is enough. Some of the things that you have dealt with in life, you have used as an excuse and said, I would do it if I had this or that or this. What you have is enough. Jesus Christ came into the world to save you and make you whole, to give you access to God the Father. You have the right to come to him. I pray on a regular basis with people, the people that I encounter in the world. They see me reaching for an invisible God, and I get excited when I think of the possibilities of what he can do. And when they hear my testimony of how he has given me life, and they begin to share their problems ever so timidly. Well, what about this? My response is not Calvin. It's not response anything God may have gifted me with. My response is always, can I pray for you? Can I talk to God who is all-powerful? Can I invite the one who does the impossible into your situation? And then I do it right then. How many of you have found that when you offer prayer first to someone, they quite often say yes? Those of you who do that get to see the manifestation of God's power. And you get to see God as becoming ever greater, ever more powerful. I challenge you, be strong, be courageous. Do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God will be with you. He will neither fail you nor forsake you. That's what it says in Deuteronomy 31, verse 6. Your God is big. Ephesians 6, verse 10. Finally, be strong in the Lord,
Who are we strong in? Finally, be strong in the Lord and walk in the power of your might. No, walk in the power of His might. God is so big.
I hope you've enjoyed this. To hear other messages by Calvin Bergsma, go to facebook.com/GCF Church or youtube.com/GCF Church. You may also follow Georgetown Christian Fellowship with our app. Go to either iOS or the Play Store for Android and search for Word Server. That's one word, Word Server, and install the free application. There you will get all of our messages, including streaming capability.